The story of Exodus is a love story. I don't know if this is obvious to people, especially given the movie Exodus starring Christian Bale as Moses by Ridley Scott. The movie has elements that point to that, but I'm not sure how clear it is. And I want to point out that the Exodus story really is a love story if we look beneath the surface. I say it's a love story because it's a story of the covenant. In the book of Exodus itself, in the Old Testament, in the Bible, right before Moses sets the people free from Egypt, we hear this. The Israelites groaned and cried out because of their slavery, and as their cry for release went up to God, he heard their groaning and was mindful of the covenant he made with Abraham. A covenant is a love story. A covenant is a loving bond. It's not a contract, an exchange of goods, as much as it is an exchange of persons. I'm yours, and you are mine. God promised this to Abraham, and he remembered that, and that's why he set the people free from Egypt in the actual Exodus, which is recounted in the book of Exodus. In the movie itself, I think this is if you look at Moses' training for what he does for the people, setting them free from Egypt through the Red Sea. Now, his training is not so much one in military strategy. I want to compare his training in the Exodus movie to another Christian Bale movie, Batman Begins, and his training in that, for his training to be Batman. His training to be Batman was, if you remember Batman Begins, his training to be a ninja. He's trained by Ra's al Ghul in the arts of stealth and the art of fear, how to use intimidation and fear to defeat your enemies. Well, that was okay for Gotham, to set Gotham free from her enemies. But the story of Exodus isn't simply a story of political or military freedom. It's a love story. God is drawing Israel into this loving union. So what's Christian Bale's Moses training? It's a training in covenant love. In the movie, Ridley Scott spends a lot of time when Moses falls in love with Zipporah, his wife. They raise kids, they fall in love. And this is his training. He also learns how to be a shepherd, to take care of sheep. These are all signs of what the covenant is. God is a shepherd. He gathers and tends his sheep. He's like a husband who marries Israel to love her. He's like a father. Christian Bale's Moses is also raising Gershon, his son. This is his training for the Exodus event. It's not primarily military training. A sign of this is when Moses gets the people to the edge of the Red Sea. And he's been struggling with this training. He doesn't want to surrender to God yet. He's not at this level of total trust, which is required for covenant love because it's a total surrender in love to another. He's on the edge of the Red Sea. The Egyptian army is coming behind him. He's abandoned his family. He's at his wit's end, and his own clever military prowess won't save him. So he takes his Egyptian sword and throws it into the sea as a sign of this total surrender to God, this act of trust. At that moment, God acts and pulls back the waters of the Red Sea, and they run through the Red Sea, and is well documented, and in this movie displayed, the Egyptians are swallowed up in the Red Sea. You could end the movie there, couldn't you? If Exodus was just about war and strife and political freedom. But in fact, that's not what Exodus is about. And so the storytellers in the movie keep going. And they get through the waters of the Red Sea and eventually end up at Mount Sinai, where Moses goes up and receives the Ten Commandments. But the giving of the law on Sinai was actually a marriage. That might sound strange to our ears now, but if you read the prophets in the Old Testament, they point to this truth that Exodus was a preparation for a kind of marriage, which is best described as a covenant. Sometime look at the prophet Hosea chapter 2. In verse 16, God says to the people of Israel, it's in a different context, but listen to it now from the perspective of the Exodus story. God says, I will allure Israel, I will lead her into the desert and speak to her heart. On that day, says the Lord, she will call me my husband. There it is. That's the Exodus story. That's what Moses is being trained for in his training as a shepherd, as a husband, as a father. That's what Israel is being led from Egypt for, to enter into covenant union with God. The Exodus story is not just a story of military freedom, it's a story of covenant love. This is great for us too because every human life is an Exodus story. We've been created by God. We're on this journey, and our lives are not primarily about our own scheming, our own success, our own prowess. In the midst of that, we're being trained in covenant love, which requires humility because it requires self-surrender. And through all of the events of our life, God is working about this great exodus for each one of us.